So you could just clip this part on your shirt. All right,
Good.
and action. So, and you can look at
I can look at
me.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you feel,
Like,
yeah, that's what
when I need to make a point.
Yes. So the first question is, tell me who you are without telling me what you do.
Who I am? I am a optimistic, enthusiastic, life lover, person who loves life. I am a great friend. I'm a great sister. I'm a great girlfriend. I really care deeply about the people I interact with, animals, the planet. I care about people's mental health and well-being. I care about people's emotional health and well-being. Yeah, I think that's pretty succinct.
Awesome.
Without what I do as work, right?
Yeah. What are some of your passion and interests, and how do they bring you joy?
Okay, my passions and interests are creating things, creating ideas, and seeing those ideas through. For me, I find joy in the journey of things more so than like reaching an end goal. It's like, what am I doing to get there? What is the substance that I'm going through? How is this gonna make my life better, make me better, make the world better? So I'm passionate about just the journey of life overall, and getting where I need to go. Yeah.
Awesome. I guess which one of your passions or interests has brought you the most change in your life?
So I would say just like being passionate about being on a journey has definitely taken me to places where I've always felt like I needed to go. For example, when I decided that I was going to move away from Detroit, I wasn't sure like where I was going to move. It wasn't like, oh, an opportunity presented itself. I was like, I know that I'm not meant to be here anymore, so I know I'm going away. And then the opportunity presented itself to move to California, and I was just like, okay, that's it. That's where I'm going. I made a decision to do this thing. I have the universe provided an avenue for me to do it. So now I just have to figure out how to get there. And like all of those stepping stones felt like really small things to do in comparison to like making the decision to do it, to want to do, like to make the move. And then it was just like, okay, now I just got to figure out how to get there. So I'm going to like fly out to California. I'm going to figure out where I'm going to live. And even though it's super expensive, I'm going to make it work. I'm going to figure out my budget. I'm going to put together a roadmap to figure out literally how I'm going to drive across the United States to get from Michigan to California. And then when I get here, I'm just going to live my best life. And I did that. So I would say that just my tenacity for, you know, being really clear with like what I want to do and how I'm going to get somewhere, and then just seeing my journey through is what was the question? Brought me the most in life.
Brought you the most change.
It brought me the most change in life. Yes, for sure.
Okay. And I know you mentioned being an optimistic person, and with that, it's like you a lot of times see the positivity and the possible outcomes of every situation. During, for instance, the example you used, was there a moment for you of self-doubt? And then, second loaded question, moments of self-doubt that you may have in your life, how do you go about overcoming them?
Recovering them?
Yeah.
Heck yeah, there's always self-doubt. I think I'm human, and doubt is one of those emotions. And one of the things I've learned, so I'm also very passionate about people like going to therapy and like basically just like getting outside help for things that you might not be able to deal with on your own, it's always good to have like an outside perspective or an objective professional to help you with those things. So one of my things was, or one of the things that I learned was that basically you can boil down all of emotions or things to like a few root emotions. And one of the most powerful ones is fear. So I look at self-doubt as just like a fear of doing something. So if I'm experiencing self-doubt, like, oh, I don't know if I'll be able to move across California and be able to support myself, it's really like I take that thought, because it's not an action yet, it always starts as a thought, and I reframe that into, what am I afraid of? Like, this is coming from fear. What am I actually afraid of? And it's like, okay, go to the worst case scenario. And it's like, okay, I'm afraid I'm going to move out to California. I won't be able to support myself, and I'm going to be a bum living on the street. And then it's like, okay, questioning that chain of logic and being like, has that ever happened to you before? Have you ever been in a situation where you've been so destitute that you ended up on the street? And it's like, no. Okay, so the first thing I do in overcoming like a fear like that is challenging the thought. And then the second thing is finding evidence of that thought not being true. So it's like, I've never had that happen before. I also have tons of family who I could like fly back home and stay with, or ask for like money to give me a ticket back home so I could live with them if I ever lost my house, my job, and all of that. So that's basically, I mean, that's a really extreme example, I think, but overcoming self-doubt is really just challenging it's just like an untrue belief, I think, is what it boils down to. You're holding some kind of fear, which causes this thought to form, which is not true, because people are powerful, and I know personally that I'm powerful and I can make whatever I want to make happen. So when I have those moments of doubt, it's just kind of like walking myself through this process of figuring out what's really going on, and then that's how I can overcome it.
Awesome. And you talked about walking yourself through the process, and so that's also obviously, having that connection, that conversation with yourself. My next question would be, when do you feel most connected to your inner self?
When do I feel most connected to my inner self? So when I'm alone and when I'm not like being stimulated by anything outside. So I'm not like with my family or with people who are like talking to me or like listening to the TV. It's like when I'm alone, most of the time it's like when I'm alone in bed about to go to sleep, or when I just wake up. It's like you have this perfect clean slate of no thoughts, no worries from the past day or for the future. So it's like you wake up and there's this like emptiness of clean slate, and it's like, oh, I could just be here, and that's like, I don't have to think about work, I don't have to think about what I'd said yesterday in this meeting, ruminating in my head. It's just like me here thinking, and that's when I feel like I can like connect to myself the most.
That's awesome. And doing that is like, everybody has to find their journeys of getting to that point, and also growth as well. So what are my question is, so with growth and understanding who you are and everything, we have these versions of ourselves that we aspire to be. And so I guess my question for you is, it's a loaded question a little bit. Not when I say loaded, like, it's like if you answer, I guess that's the definition of loaded, right? When you say, I'm going to ask you this question, if it's a yes or a no, then here's the follow-up question. So my question is there a version of yourself that you aspire to be? And if so, how do you navigate the gap between the current version of yourself and that possible other version? Or do you feel that you're that person and you're just, because obviously we're going to always grow and always evolve too. Do you feel like you've become that person and now you're just like, oh, we're just going with it now?
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting question. And I guess, okay, I would say I'm more of the latter, where, and I'll tell you why. I believe that, like this moment right now is it. This is the moment. So if the world were to implode like the next second, I try to live as if it's like, okay, am I being the best version of who I can be in this moment right now? So yes, I'm very, I feel like I am living the best version of me that I can at this moment with the resources that I have, with the things that I've learned in life, and to aspire to be a future me wouldn't do the me now justice, I feel. I don't know if I need to explain that further, but does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. But if you want to explain it further, you're welcome to as well.
Let me see, how would I explain that further? I guess it also has to do with like, so I don't know if you've heard of like the law of attraction, and I think there's a lot of like fad talk about it, but I do think that there's some truth in like attracting the things you want to yourself, and the universe responds to your vibration at this moment. It won't respond to your vibration in the future. So if I am sitting here and I say like, oh my gosh, I'll never be able to move to Mexico or whatever. Like, I'll never be able to do that. That'll be so hard for me. Then the universe will be like, okay, well, you'll never be able to move to Mexico. Like, that's what she thinks. And it won't provide me opportunities to help me do that. But if I'm like, okay, I know that's where I want to physically be in the future, I want to start like thinking right now, like, okay, what can I do right now that shows that I'm in this mindset to where I want to be in the future? Another example that I think resonates with a lot of people is like people talk about money. And I feel like I personally am really good at like attracting like financial situations. So like when I first moved here, I had a job and I made like $44,000. I was like barely making it, living off credit cards and stuff. And I was like, when I first got into the law of attraction, like a friend in the dance community sent me this like challenge. It was like, oh, do this like manifestation challenge and you manifest money or whatever. But the point was it was more about changing your mindset. So it was like, okay, if I am going to try to put my physical self in a place where I'm making more money, then I need to start like acting like that or putting that vibration out to the universe. So it was like, okay, I'm gonna stop saying like, oh, I can't afford these things, oh, I'm too poor, and stop like speaking those things into existence. But then at the same time, I also like made me do actions that would also help physically bring that. So I started applying for jobs that were way above the pay I was making. I started like, you know, going into interviews with that mindset, like, okay, if this is what I want to be and this is what I deserve and this is what I am right now, then I'm going to speak like it. And then I landed my job where I made, you know, like $95,000, and I was like, oh yeah, like this actually works.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
so this moment right now, I'm who I want to be.
That's good. Yeah, and a lot of people spend years, and some people never truly find who they want to be. But it's like it's actually putting in the work to understand yourself and find out what resonates with you and bringing out the things that you even struggle with, kind of thing and stuff.
Yeah.
Which leads me to my next question is, and it is, were there, and you don't have to name all, or I'm just going to ask the question.
Okay.
I have this habit of I'm not gonna talk. Okay. Anyways, I'll bring that. But what do you feel like one of your weaknesses might have been in the past that held you back from being that version that you are now that you're happy with?
Yeah, I could tell you the weakness is I still deal with it. I just know how to overcome it. Anxiety, and anxiety is just thinking too far in the future, which is why why it's so important to me to stay in the now. Anxiety, they say like depression is worrying about the past. Anxiety is worrying about the future. And I'm very much like, oh, if I do this, then what? Or if I make this decision now, what will it affect 3 steps down the road? And that's another thing that I've worked with my therapist is like, well, you can't, like, you have no idea what's going to happen 3 steps down the road, or you don't know if you're going to be a bum on the street if you move to California. Like, I'm not a fortune teller, I'm not a mind reader. So I can't just make these overarching statements about my life that keep me from moving forward, and keep me from making decisions because I'm worried about what will happen. So yeah, that's one of the things that has stopped me in the past, and still affects me in who I am now. But I have tools to cope with it, and tools to recognize when I'm doing that, like when I'm like going back into that mind frame, so I can pull myself out of it.
Awesome. And what steps that you have taken and are currently, let me rephrase that question, kind of thing, is like, how hard is it to, because it's like you obviously have steps to deal with the thing that you're struggling with, the anxiety and everything. Like, how hard is it for you to remind yourself to implement those steps, or is it not hard at all?
I mean, it varies. Some days it's harder than others. I'm a very, like I said at the beginning, like I pride myself on being like in touch with things around me. Another thing my therapist and I talked about was that I'm like a highly sensitive person. So at any one time I could be like overcome with emotions, and for me they're like a wave that kind of sweeps me away. So in those moments it can be really hard to be like, am I just going down an anxiety spiral, or is this real? Other times I can be like, yo, you're tripping right now, like just dial it back. But yeah, I would say like it ebbs and it flows. It depends on the time of the month. It depends on like the situation I'm in. It depends on who I'm with. Like, I realize my family really triggers my anxiety just because it's like patterns that I've grown up in. So in those situations, it might be harder for me to realize what's happening to me, because your brain is just a big ball of pathways and circuits. So it's really used to patterns. So when I'm with my family, it's like, oh, if my sister does something that triggers the pattern, it's like, oh, the response to that is to go into your anxiety spiral. But like, now that I've done a lot of self-work and work with my therapist, and kind of like, in those moments where I'm able to really connect with myself, I can pick up when that anxiety is kind of like taking over, and stop it. And then I also have a very supportive partner who, him just being so calm in situations where I have anxiety also makes me like secure in it, to be like, well, he's not freaking out, so he like models this like person without anxiety for me, and then I can also use that as a sounding board. So it helps to surround myself with people who like him, who are supportive in that way.
Awesome. I have 2 more questions.
Yeah.
One of the last questions is, what core strengths do you have that you feel help define your character?
Core strengths. So I do think the being a hyper wait yeah a sensitive like person helps me, even though like I feel like it can be a detriment, but I've learned to use it. So the fact that I'm like a more sensitive person can be a strength because I can perceive, my environment and think critically about it, but also perceive myself and think critically about that myself now that I've learned how to do that. And that's one of the reasons why we talked before about me starting to life coach, is because I have these like perceptions, and I do feel like the way that I work through them in myself is something that I want to be able to teach to others. So it feels like a strength to me. And I guess another strength would be I'm very tenacious. If I have a goal in my mind, I'm going to go after it. It's like I can latch onto a thought and I'm like, I'm going to get that thing. That thing is going to be mine. And then I will do whatever is in my power to get that thing that I want. So, and like I'm not swayed by, I feel like if a lot of people would hit like a roadblock with something, they'll be like, oh, I can't do it. Well, let's give up. It would take like a lot of roadblocks for me to be like, oh, I'm going to give up on this thing. I will get something done for sure.
Awesome. So. Oh, awesome. My final question is, a lot of people say, what would you tell your younger self? But I want to go the opposite way.
Okay.
What do you want to tell your future self?
My future self?
Yeah.
Well, my future self is me right now. So, like, you get it, girl. You doing the thing. You living the life. And I'm proud of you. Keep going. Because I know whatever you're about to chase, you're about to get it. That's what I would tell my future self.
Awesome. Yeah, and I don't know, did you have any final words you want to say? Or?
No, this was really fun. Yeah. I really enjoyed doing this.
And so I end each interview with a high five to
nice.
So, yeah, awesome.